Hello and welcome. I'm so glad that you're joining us today. I am Trista Sears, and we will be learning about retrieval strategies to boost your learning. After completing this lecture, you will be able to explain the learning process, describe ways to make learning more effective, identify effective retrieval strategies to assist with retention, generate effective retrieval strategies to assist with learning, and use retrieval strategies to assist with both learning and retention. Pause the presentation at this slide. Let's take a few minutes, get out a sheet of paper, and write down the first things that come to mind when you hear the following questions. There are no right or wrong answers. 1. I learn best when. 2. I can study best by. 3. How easy is it for me to recall something that I learned several weeks, months, or years ago? Keep your answers close by. We will revisit them. We have been learning our whole lives, but will we be able to recall the information when we need it? We first learned crying was how we signaled that we needed something. As we grow and mature, the things that we learn become more complex and sophisticated. Sometimes we will need to recall this information immediately and with great detail, but will we be able to in these potentially critical moments? In this presentation, we will learn about what learning is, how we learn, and study strategies that will enable us to recall the information when we need it. Quiz yourself. Select all that apply. There may be more than one correct answer. In this presentation, we are going to learn A. Effective retrieval strategies, B. The learning process, C. Effective bribery strategies, or D. How to effectively learn. In this presentation, we are going to learn effective retrieval strategies, the learning process, and how to effectively learn. We will not be covering bribery strategies for the purposes of this presentation. Brown et al. Believe that we learn through a process of encoding, consolidating, and retrieving information. For learning to be effective, it is helpful to think of this process as a cycle. If we think about the process as a cycle, the retrieved information is re-encoded, reconsolidated, and retrieved again, thereby reinforcing the learning. Encoding happens when we initially take in information through our senses and store it in our short-term memories. If nothing else in the learning process happens, we will very quickly forget what we have just learned. Brown et al. Define consolidation as how we initially make sense of the information that we are taking in. This is where we determine what is important and begin to relate what we are learning to information that we already know or begin to apply the information to experiences that we have had. Retrieval helps us move the information that we have learned from our short-term memories into our long-term memories and back again. Retrieval occurs when we recall the information that we have learned in some way. Quiz yourself. Select all that apply. There may be more than one correct answer. Which of the following are stages of the learning process? A. Encoding, B. Listening, C. Retrieval, or D. Consolidation. Encoding, consolidation, and retrieval are stages of the learning process. If this was your answer, you are correct. Listening is necessary to learn in most instances, but it is not a stage of the learning process. Brown et al. Propose that learning is most effective when it is interleaved or mixed up, occurs over time, and makes use of reflection, elaboration, and retrieval practice. Let's take a few minutes and respond to this question. Keep in mind, there may be more than one correct answer. Learning is more effective when A. It happens all at once, B. It is interleaved, C. We study the same way, or D. We use reflection. The correct answers are learning is more effective when it is interleaved and we use reflection. We can learn more effectively if we spread our review out over time, even as we are learning new information. If we go back and review the older information, we are further solidifying the original memory pathways and moving the older information into our long-term memories. By interleaving learning and practice, we maximize our opportunities for retention and retrieval. Yassar et al. Find in their research on interleaved learning and retrieval with high school students that students who learned and studied using interleaving scored considerably better than students who studied using blocked methods. Mix up the topics and how you study. You can do this by using flashcards one time, maybe the next time elaborate on what you are learning, and then when you study again, maybe role play, teach the information to a friend, or apply the information to a real-world scenario, and you can reap the benefits of interleaving. Don't make it easy. Productive struggle is not a bad thing. When we add an element of difficulty to our studying, we retain much more despite how we feel about the struggle. Johnson et al. Found that most often individuals mistakenly interpret the productive struggle associated with learning and retrieval to indicate that learning has been less effective, even though this struggle was shown in their research to be associated with increased learning and retention. According to Brown et al., when we allow ourselves to struggle or forget some things and then go back and revisit them through study or additional learning, we're actually helping ourselves learn through reconsolidation and building a more complex understanding of the material. Interleaving and spacing create an element of difficulty. When we purposefully stretch ourselves and require ourselves to mentally work to recall this information, we are creating long-lasting learning. Let's quiz ourselves on what we have learned so far with a true or false question. If we forget some of the things that we learn between initial learning and recall, we are learning failures. False. Forgetting things between initial learning and recall is normal. The recall of this forgotten information moves the information deeper into our long-term memories. We can help ourselves study by creating quizzes over the material for ourselves. We can create quizzes by using checkpoint and review questions from the text if they are available, or by creating questions from our notes. Sometimes you may find it easier to work with a classmate or friend and quiz each other on the information that you are learning. Flashcards are another effective strategy that we can use to help ourselves retain information. We can either use pre-made flashcards or create them using note cards or websites like Quizlet. Another strategy that we can use is the concept of Lightner boxes. These boxes use flashcards to help structure studying. Brown et al. Describe Lightner boxes as a 4-box system in which flashcards are moved from one box to another, depending on how well you recall the information. Cards that are placed in the box of easy recall do not need to be reviewed as frequently as the cards that are placed in the box of cards we struggle with, but all cards should be reviewed periodically. We do not need to have boxes to use this strategy. We can create separate piles of flashcards based on how well we know the information. Cornell and Bjork issue a word of caution when it comes to dividing flashcards in this fashion. Their research indicates that we are poor judges of how well we know the concepts on the flashcards to be able to divide them up. As a result, we need to make certain that we are also regularly studying the cards that we think that we know best. Mnemonics are tools that help us hold large amounts of information in our memories for easy recall. Brown et al. Provide many examples of mnemonic devices from simple rhymes to elaborate memory palaces. We are going to focus on 3 devices for this presentation: rhymes, acrostics, and acronyms. A rhyming mnemonic uses rhymes to help us remember pieces of information like I before E except after C. An acrostic is a word in which each letter of the word represents a concept or piece of information to be recalled, like Holmes for remembering the Great Lakes. An acronym is a saying in which the first letter of each word stands for a different concept, like please excuse my dear Aunt Sally for remembering the order of operations in math class. Quiz yourself. Keep in mind there may be more than one correct answer. What are some of the strategies that we can use to help ourselves more successfully remember information? A. Study over time. B. Flashcards. C. Mnemonic devices. Or D. Mix up our study with different topics. All of the answers are correct. Studying over time, using flashcards, using mnemonic devices, and mixing up our study with different topics all can help us be more successful at remembering information. Let's think about it. Pause the presentation at this slide and get out the sheet of paper with the questions that you answered earlier. Take a few minutes and reflect on your answers. Of the strategies that we discussed, have you ever used any of these? If so, which ones? What strategies do you think would be easiest for you to implement? In summary, learning is a process that can be deepened through the use of effective retrieval strategies. It is my hope that through the insight you have gained into the learning process and the implementation of some of the suggestions made in this presentation, you will be well on your way to being able to recall the information that you need in critical moments. Self-quizzing, flashcards, and mnemonics are some strategies that we can use to help us retain what we have learned. These strategies are even more effective if we learn and study different topics at the same time and we spread our learning and recall out over time. Think about what you have learned today. Which of the following statements are true? Select all that apply. A. Learning is a process. B. Flashcards are not an effective way to study. C. We should study only the night before the exam. D. We should study over time. Over the course of today's presentation, we learned that learning is a process and that we should study over time to most effectively learn and retain the information. If you would like more information on the topics that I covered today, here is the list of references that I used in the making of this presentation. Thank you for attending.